Just a bit of an update on the situation with the bearings. I've received the 944 standard bearings. As stated by many people, they're only grooved the top 180 degrees. And I think some people say 220 degrees is better, but you know, they changed to that I think later on anyway. But everybody says put the smooth bit at the bottom and the grooved one at the top, and that kind of makes sense because the oil will run down and sit at the bottom. So I've got everything else looks right. The shoulder bearing goes in. I think you can update that and put a bigger shouldered one on, but the one I'm putting on is exactly the same as the one that came off. The half bearings all seem the same. The only one that's slight difference, same as the others really, is this is the end one. This is the one that has got the sort of nasty wear and the bit of rust in there. Same as the other bearings really. That's sort of the top, and that's grooved all the way around the bottom, and it's got 4 holes in, whereas a newer one is only grooved in the top half and not grooved at the bottom, and that dowel hole is smaller, only slightly. So what I've done basically is just drill it out as close as I could to virtually this. I couldn't quite get an exact drill for that. And then I've just kind of filed it slightly until it just about goes on and sort of chamfered the edge a little bit. And it goes on fine. I've sort of deburred the sort of inner bit. It's marked the bearing a little bit, but it's not going to... I've sort of deburred the chamfer bit of it there. But as it is, it goes in and just sits in nice. There's no slop in there. I just kept doing it, sort of drilled it very close, and then just sort of needle filed it gradually around until it just about went on. Then give it a bit more, and it just goes in snug, and there's no movement at all. So that's the bearing side of things sorted out. The bushing for the tensioner lever sort of affair, where there's like a roller bush and then there's a pivot for the tensioner. I ordered new bushers, sort of those there. Ordered a new bolt. Didn't really measure, it doesn't really tell you the measurements on the website. Took mine out, mine's completely smaller. I don't know if you can see on here, on the end, it's slightly mushroomed. I can show you on the picture. Yeah, you can see. It's not straight, it's bent, it's distorted. So I think the fact that it's mushroomed a bit is not going to help with it. It's probably, maybe it's been loose or whatever, but I think you can see it from there. It's not straight. When you roll it in a vise, you can see the end sort of moves in and out. The only one I can find England-wise is this one, which is a later one, which is 82 to 86, something like that. Then I think it changed again. So I think I don't know if there's 3, I think there's 3 different ones. So this is the early one, which is a bit strange because the engine is, as far as I can see, it's got the later 82 onwards sort of cambelt, etc. But I'm assuming this is definitely the smaller bolt, which is the early up to 81, because mine was registered sort of towards the end of 81, 7th or 8th, 81 I think. So obviously some of the bits on mine are the earlier bit, which just doesn't help. If it was all the original engine, I could just put the engine number, but even then sometimes the websites aren't right. So what I've decided to do, I can get one of these early ones from the States. You're talking something like 50 odd quid plus the postage, then plus the 20% duty. But this one, actually, the lengthwise, it's a bit longer, so I could cut down the threaded part. The shoulder's a bit longer. This is 12mm and 27mm long. This is 10mm and 25mm long. But I don't see there being an issue machining this down, shortening this sort of shoulder and machining this down to 10mm, as long as it's a nice clean, I can clean up the finish. It's not, I mean, that's not dead smooth. It's only got to sit in a plastic bush. It doesn't move loads, which would be a decent modification. And where he sort of takes down the shoulder further back, I'm going to get him to not take it as far down as that, because you can see it's actually smaller than the thread. Just take it down to the bigger size of the thread, so then there's a bit more strength in it. But the fact it's got a bigger head will kind of be a bit better, because the bushing with this one, the bushing, see, I don't even know if this is the right one, because the one on 928 Ross in America, the head looks as big as that. It looks like it's got a bigger head, whereas this head, you see, barely covers the edge of the sort of shoulder of the bushes that are in there. So I'm basically gonna see if I can get some. I've got another one of these bolts coming, so I might get them to do both, and then I'll sell the other one probably. But that's a decent quality bolt from Design 911, so I don't see any issue with machining that down. Obviously I've got to be careful tightening up because the head's bigger, but obviously the thread's still an M8 thread. But I think that's a decent solution. As long as the length of the shoulder is the same as this one, then I can just cut down the thread to the right length. There's definitely 3 different ones, because there's the bushes for this one. There's up to 81 or something. Then there's 82 to 83. Then there's these bushes. So I went on 928 or Us and looked at the 2 earlier type of bushes. They're different to that. They're kind of split bushes. So there's 2 sorts besides that one. So I've ordered 2 of each of those from Design 911. So I've got, because I'm not sure which one it is. I can't really find a measurement for this bolt. So I don't know whether those 2 bushes will fit this, or it's the up to 81 bush, or it's the 82 to 83 bush that I need. But I figure if I've got the 2 sets of bushes and the bolts, then I can make it work. So it's just getting a bit silly little things like that, but I just daren't. I mean, if this bolt looked really new and nice, I'd put it back in, but it's like it's like when you're doing the cam bolt on the studs on the cam bolt on the newer Volkswagens. You're meant to change the stud, and a lot of people don't. I don't on my Scirocco, just because in case the stud snaps and you've got a bugger of a job to drill it out. But seeing as this is a bolt, and the fact it's bent anyway, I can't, if I can't get this machine down, I'm pretty sure. I spoke to somebody today and he says he can do it for me, so I think that's the way to go. And like I say, I think with a bigger head on, I think it should have a bigger head on. I don't know I don't even know if this is the original bolt. It fits right, etc. But the head looks, I would have thought the head would be bigger, because the head is only just bigger than the flange, the sort of flange on here. Because obviously this one is, similar. But we shall see. So that's the state of play at the moment. I've dropped my valve guides off at the machining guy, and the valve stem oil seals, so he can get on and do the heads now. He said he's hoping to polish my crank tomorrow. So once the crank's back, I can sit all the bearings in, put the bottom end together. I think what I'm going to do first though is I'm going to put all the rods on the crank with the bearings, because I've heard a lot of people say these bearings, the sizing is a bit vague, and Porsche were a bit cleverer. They had 3 different sizes, sort of tight, and I don't quite know how they work it, but they had it so the tolerances were bang on perfect. Now obviously these bearings I've got aren't going to be like that, but then some people have said they're too tight. I can't see them being too loose, but as long as you can't feel any play on them, they should be fine. But I just want to put them all on and move them on the crank and make sure they're nice and free, because obviously if I'm putting the crank on and then putting the rods in with the pistons on, sliding them down, if it becomes tight, I'm not really going to feel the tightness, because I'm going to be working against all the rings, piston rings, etc. So I'm not really going to be able to feel it properly. And obviously I've got to put the pistons on first to put the rods on. So I think that's the way to go. I've numbered all the pistons and rods anyway, and the rods are still on the pistons. I'm going to do it like that, and leave the bearings in that I put in, so I know when I put them on the crank, when it's in the block, I know that each bearing is moving correctly, and there's no tight spots, because I've had it on the older Volkswagens I do, where you put big end in and there's a bit of a tight spot. Now there's a general rule when I do the air-cooled stuff: if you let go of the rod and it drops down of its own weight, and you spin the engine and they just fall down of their own weight, there's no problem. If it sort of stays up there as you're spinning the engine over, obviously this is different, but if you've got a tight spot and it won't, you know, you let go of the rod and it doesn't drop down of its own weight, and it'll sit there like that. If it drops down, you know it's free. If it sits there, you know it's a bit too much of a tight spot. And then possibly I can play about, and apparently sometimes the bearings can be different sizes, I don't know. I can play about with the bearings and swap them about. I mean, worst scenario, I'd put the old big ends back in, because there's nothing wrong with them. No sign of any major wear on them. And a lot of people have said, oh, don't do the big ends, but I'd like to. So I'll see how we go with that. So just thought I'd let people know about those bolts, because like I say, when you read up on it, it seems like there's only two. On 911 Design, they only list two. But then they do the bushes, the 3 different bushes. They do the bush for that, the bush for that, and there must be one in between. They do the bush for that as well. But they only do the bolt for that. And then they do a slightly later bolt, which is even bigger, I believe. Obviously, they just made it bigger as they went along and beefed it up. I mean, these, compared to the bushes that are in mine are really thin and smaller. So obviously 12mm is a lot stronger than 10mm, even though it's still only on a M8 bolt. But yeah, once I get this machined and I put it all together and the bushes and stuff, I'll do another video and show that so people can see. Because if you can just buy this bolt and have it machined down, I mean, this was about £9. It's a lot better than have to pay, you know, wait for one to come from America, etc. I mean, I'd probably use, if I do the cambelt again on this, I'd probably reuse that. It's not like it's torqued up to, I've got to check the torque on it, but it ain't got to be that tight. There's a lot of thread on there, and I'll Loctite it as well. But yeah, so yeah, 944 bearings do fit. Like I say, there's a lot of debate about whether this should be grooved all the way around. Most people I've read up online are saying this should be grooved. You should have the groove halves at the top. And then some are saying 220, it should be grooved round. But I don't see a problem with them. If 944s have got them grooved there, and the oiling holes look all the same, they don't look different sizes. I've heard people say about the drillings and different sizes and whatever. And as far as I can see, if there's less groove in the bearing, there's more pressure. Obviously, there's still the same amount of holes, but it's not all the way around. So once the oil's in there, it can't get out as quickly. It's going to sit in the bottom and then ooze out. Whereas if there's a groove in there, it can, you know, I don't quite know. But that's how I'm doing it. You know, these were sort of just under £200 for the set, whereas the genuine 9 to 8 ones were like £500, and I couldn't get any at the moment anyway. So I think that's a fair compromise. Like I say, you just got to modify that hole, but it's no biggie. I mean, I don't think that bearing does a vast amount, because I know it is the end one, so I suppose it gets a bit of load from the cambelt, etc. But the other ones were a lot more bearing. There's a lot more bearings on it, so you know, at the end of the day, if I put it all together and it goes bang, it's my own fault, and I'll have to start again. Well, I won't. I'll just buy another engine, to be fair. But no, I think it'll be fine. I'm toying with the idea of getting rid of the viscous fan and just putting 2 big electric fans on. It's got one at the front at the moment, but I've put the bigger radiator on, so I think if I put 2 electric fans on and got rid of the viscous thing, I know a lot of people saying, oh, the drain on the battery, the load on it affects the horsepower and whatever they're saying, which I understand. Yeah, it does. You know, you put your aircon on and whatever, or you put your heaters on, your revs drop. I understand the electrical load side of it, but obviously, yes, you're going to get a bit of electrical loads, lose a bit of power, whatever. But when you've got a viscous fan like that driving it, there's quite a lot of force on that end bearing, which, you know, and on the water pump as well. So I think it does the water pump. Does it do the water pump? I can't remember now. No, it obviously doesn't. No, it doesn't do the water pump. But yeah, it puts a bit more force on the bottom crank pulley. So maybe I'll do away with, not straight away, but I might do away with that. Put some